To approval of the minutes from the May 28th, 2024 meeting. Would anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Lambert, seconded by Mr. Buechner. Any discussion, corrections, edits? Okay, I think we're ready for the roll call.
Okay, Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Abstain.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Mr. Fajon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We're moving on to public comment for items that are not on the agenda. So this time is reserved for people who want to speak on something that we're not going to be discussing tonight. Okay, see no one coming forward, we'll move on to item 5, which is the preliminary site plan approval, JPLN 2024-0009. Proposed Town Haven site condominium, 19 units, south of Wattles, west of Rochester, parcels 88-20-22-226-023 and 88-20-22-226-24. Section 22, currently zoned R1C, one family residential district.
So Ben Carlisle had a conflict this evening and won't be here, so Shana Cott from Carlisle Workman Associates will be making the presentation. I just need to pull up the PowerPoint.
Okay, excellent. It looks like Mr. Hudson is joining us. Maybe we'll reflect the,
Okay, thank you.
let the record reflect.
All right, thank you everyone for having me. I am here to talk to you about Town Haven, the new residential development proposed just south of Wattles and west of Rochester Road. Maybe I'll just hit your enter button. Okay, so about the site, the address is 934 East Wattles. In total, the site is about 8 acres. It is a largely undeveloped site with the exception of a home in the northeast corner, which would be removed for the development. There are many trees on site and about 1.63 acres of wetland. This site is a zoned R1C, one family residential district, and we've got R1C to the 3 sides of the site, and to the west side, we've got neighborhood nodes and general business zoning districts. The site plan is proposed for 19 single-family homes. It includes a new private road, which is of cul-de-sac design, meaning it is a dead end. There is a sidewalk proposed going around the private road, a 6,600 square foot detention basin up in the east side there, our landscaping around, and I will note that the site plan in itself is compliant with dimensional standards relating to setbacks, height, etc. So our access to the site is just from the one point on Wattles. The vehicular traffic, of course, will use the new private cul-de-sac and use that turnaround at the end there. And pedestrian traffic will use a 5-foot wide sidewalk that goes all the way around the new road. For landscaping, the application does meet all the requirements for landscaping at this site. We've got 15 greenbelt trees along Wattles there on the left, which is the north. We've got 40 trees proposed along the private road, and there are 114 inches of woodland replacement required. And I'm sure people might be curious, so this site is largely covered with trees at this time. There are almost 1,000 trees on this site as of right now. However, the tree replacement plan showed that there were only 8 landmark trees on site and about 100, give or take, woodland trees. And with that, 114 inches of replacement are required, and they are being replaced. The 6,600 square foot detention basin up in the east too. And so we did want to note relating to landscaping that our department has received communications from the property owner at 3837 Eden Dairy Drive expressing concerns related to this new road for two reasons. One being the lack of landscaping in this area in particular, and number two, just the fact that this road is close enough where the resident feels that, you know, they might be in harm with a car that could go right through here. The rear setback of the road to the rear lot line is about 24 feet. And with this, we noted that maybe some potential solutions are increased natural landscaping in this area, maybe bollards or a guardrail to make these residents feel safer, more safe. For elevations, we've got 4 different housing types proposed for this development, namely the Homewood Ranch, the Halston Ranch, Manor Colonial, and the Manhattan. The building heights vary with a minimum of 17 feet, 4.5 inches, and a maximum of 26 feet, 6.5 inches. The building materials are the hardy plank siding, brick, stone, dimensional shingles, and vinyl windows. And in the site plans, no specific colors were called out. They did say that various colors would be listed. And today we did actually receive additional photos from the applicant, just giving us more color examples that I'll show you guys here in a second. So I made a separate slide for each housing type. I started with the shortest one, if you will, the 17 feet, 4.5 inches Homewood Ranch. So the first floor of the Homewood Ranch is just under 2,000 square feet. It comes with 3 bedrooms, 3 restrooms, and a 2-car garage. An optional second floor is available with an extra 2 bedrooms and 1 restroom. And I did note that there is 1 height listed for this housing type, although we can understand that whether someone chooses to have a first floor or 2 floors, the height is going to change. So I'm sure the applicant can confirm this with us tonight if that 17 feet applies to 1 story or 2. Our second housing type, the Halston Ranch, we have a first floor that's about 1,900 square feet. It comes with 1 bedroom, 2 restrooms, and the 2-car garage. Again, there is an optional second floor coming in 2 different sizes, 475 square feet for another bedroom and restroom, or 724 square feet for another 2 bedrooms, 1 restroom, just under 21 feet tall. Our third housing type, the Manor Colonial, this one is 2 stories off the bat, 2,900 square feet. First floor, 2-car garage, 1 restroom. And the second floor is where all the bedrooms are located, 4 bedrooms, 2 additional restrooms, and about 25 feet, 6.5 inches. Lastly, we have the Manhattan, which again comes with 2 stories and about 3,500 square feet. The first floor has a 3-car garage and 1 restroom. The second floor has the 4 bedrooms and 3 restrooms, and same height. This one is going to be 26 feet, 6.5 inches. This is the first slide showing some of the additional photos that came in for each housing type. In this slide here, we're seeing some examples of the Homewood Ranch. It appears that each housing type is going to come with several different versions. There's no standardized version of any one of these. They all have different architectural design elements. So again, this is the Homewood. These were 2 photos provided of examples of the Manor Colonial design. And 3 photos showing examples of other Manhattan builds. So we've got our site plan review design standards. The development shall ensure compatibility with existing commercial districts and provided that transition between land uses. The development shall recognize the best architectural building design practices and enhance the character, environment, and safety for pedestrians and motorists. And so with that said, we are asking the Planning Commission, does the proposed project meet the site plan review standards? And also, should additional landscaping, screening, and/or safety measures be implemented at that rear lot line to alleviate concerns of residents? That's all I've got. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the building department? Mr. Fox?
throughout all the conversations with the applicant, was the idea of connecting this road to Edenvale brought up? Like, because the way I'm seeing this is that the road's literally gonna go right up to almost connecting to Edenvale, but then it just cuts off.
It was discussed informally, but not proposed at any time.
Okay. Is there any like ordinance reason or anything like in terms of the city's codes or that would prevent that from connecting through?
No, there's,
Okay.
no.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions? Mr. Lambert?
Yes, Ms. Cott, could you briefly explain what a site condominium is? Sometimes when residents hear the word condominium, the image pops up into their head of a small, like an apartment-like building, rather than being a legal term like what we're talking about here.
You want to take a stab at it, or you want me to do it?
I was going to say, I'm not going to have the best definition for you. I apologize. I understand your point. Obviously, these are not connected homes. They're not small by any means. They really would just look like a normal residential development from as far as I could see. But maybe Mr. Savadant could elaborate more.
So she was right. Everything she said was correct. I'll elaborate a little bit more.
Please.
So when I first started here, a long, long time ago, you know, before I had any gray hair, we would see a lot of subdivisions. People would refer to them as subdivisions because the way they were approved was through the subdivision process. In 1980, there was a new law that was adopted called the Condominium Act, and we all when we hear the word condominium, we tend to think of attached units. A condominium is a form of ownership. It's not an actual building type. But one of the things that the Condominium Act allowed was condominiums, but horizontal condominiums, where I think it was truly intended for vertical ownership, but the site condominium concept came about post 1980, and the reason it was attractive was the end product looked the same as a subdivision, but the process of review and approval was way quicker. It could be anywhere from 18 to 24 months quicker to get approval of a site condominium versus a subdivision. So Ms. Cott is correct. It looks the same as a subdivision. The form of ownership is a little bit different. There's units versus lots, and there's limited common area versus, you know, private property, et cetera, et cetera. That's in the details, but it is a single-family detached development.
Thank you.
Let me ask a follow-up question to that, because you just mentioned a limited common area. Is that a requirement that this development have a common area?
It is not a requirement that the development have, there's two types, there's general common area, limited common area. It's not a requirement that have general common area.
Okay. And I also am wondering about things like landscaping, and when I think of condominiums, I think of an association, and I think of paying dues, and then there's one person who provides the landscaping, maybe the snow removal. I'm not really sure what else would go with it. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, so what typically happens with single-family residential developments in Troy is the detention basin is typically sold to the city of Troy for $1, as long as with some funds that will help pay for the long-term maintenance of the detention basin. So Troy takes over the maintenance of the pond because they now own it, but there can be other elements. So private roads are one element that needs to be maintained by the association, but there could be other elements. There could be a sign, snow plowing, grass cutting. There could be open space. There could be a community pool, you know, as an example. So there's typically an active association because they're responsible for maintenance and they're responsible for handling money to pay for the maintenance.
Okay. And one more question. I see at the, along the east, like there looks like there's a drive heading to the detention basin. Is that just an easement, and is it paved?
That would be a paved drive to maintain the detention basin so that trucks and other equipment can get to it.
Okay.
John, you're looking
Well, it's a grass pavement.
Is it grass? I'm sorry, I didn't.
It did look like, I was kind of thinking it looked like grass in one of the pictures, but it's able to, it's an easement, so trucks can go.
It's depending, it's either an easement or it's owned outright by the city,
Okay, okay,
guaranteeing access to the detention basin.
okay. Does anyone else have any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and invite the applicant to come up.
Good evening, everybody. It's been a minute since I've been up here. Joe Maniaci with Mondrian Properties. They pretty much summed up everything. I'm sure it's been a minute since you guys have seen a standard subdivision come to the board. We're not asking for any waivers or variances. It's straight up by the book. We meet and comply with everything. As far as colors on the elevations, we do let the homeowners determine those. We feel that Mondrian's very forefront in design and elements, so we think we're on the cutting edge in what people are asking for. So we'd like to keep up with that. You're more than welcome to drive through any of our later communities and see how contemporary the stuff we're putting up. And with that said, I'll answer any questions.
Yep, Mr. Fox?
Yeah, so I was just looking at the plans here. I mean, there's the road that dead ends to the south, but there's actually another road, Deerfield, on the west, and they both just dead end into this lot. And I look at that and I think, well, whoever built that obviously intended for the roads to connect through into this parcel. So I guess I'm just curious how the decision-making process went on your guys' end, deciding to not connect this to the larger neighborhood.
So we had previously brought a site plan to the Planning Commission regarding a subdivision there, and we had met, this was way before COVID, we had met with all the neighbors, and that was the biggest complaint that we had at the time, was that we were connecting the streets. And to today, they still would prefer that we did not connect to their subdivision. They did not want extra traffic driving through the sites.
Yeah, Mr. Buechner?
The issues on the list as people are driving down and the lights are flashing into the neighbors coming down the cul-de-sac, you're the expert. What would you do from fencing to berm to landscaping? What would you propose?
Immediate reaction would be a fence, would be the short term. Long term is the plantings of the trees, and as they grow over time, they'd fill in. I'm not opposed to either one. Putting up a 6-foot privacy fence along the width of the cul-de-sac to help deter headlights going to the neighbors to the south, or adding more trees or relocating some of the plantings that we have that are around the detention basin towards that area. Our problem is that there is a water main easement that we have to put in, and a storm or a sanitary sewer easement that we have to connect to that street. So in that process, we'll be digging up and going down deep to connect the utilities. So we can plant the trees, but a privacy fence would probably be the fastest resolution for headlights.
What height are you thinking?
6 foot
Thank you.
by the width of the cul-de-sac.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for the
Got a
applicant?
few. I just wanted to comment that I like your architectural styles, and I like the variations within one particular type of, like, see the ranch. You've got a lot of variations, moving the garage on one side, the other side. Same thing with the colonials. They all look even different. Nice job. You don't have to have monotonous thing of, all looking the same. It's really a well-executed design, I think.
Appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Yep, Mr. Lambert?
First, I appreciate the fact you're offering ranch homes, because people in my age group who want to stay in Troy are looking more and more at ranch homes. But I know you have to meet market demand. What kind of market demand are you seeing when people are looking to buy from you? Are they saying, I'd like a ranch home, but I've got younger kids, so I need a traditional colonial?
So there's always a market for the colonial for the families. We are seeing a trend towards master bedroom first floors. That's why we're offering the additional bedrooms upstairs in both ranch plans. So they could have the best of both worlds. They can have the master on the first and still have bedrooms upstairs. And that actually works for both the downsizer and the young family that has just one child. But for the downsizers, the kids move out of the house, but they have someplace to come back home to, which we're seeing a lot of.
Thank you.
Yep, Mr. Tagle.
You've probably heard this years ago about garage doors fronting on the street. Do you ever see a day when you'll come to the commission and have the garage doors not fronting on the street?
I've presented projects like that. Beachview, Parkview on Beach were all side entrance garages. The lots were larger and could accommodate that. Depending on the community, I have one coming up where we have garages in the rear
In Troy?
in Troy. You'll see that soon.
Can't hardly wait. No,
You'll see that soon,
thank you.
so.
Another
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
On the east side, on the top of this drawing, you've got, it shows some, looks like some kind of landscaping, not necessarily landscape, but trees or something. Is that the existing trees will remain? What's
Yeah,
this?
we're preserving as many trees as possible to buffer us between our new community and the commercial side that's on the, to the west of us, or east of us.
Okay, so is that to the east? How about on the west side?
We have a buffer, if you see the site plan, you'll see there's a small buffer along the, between the two communities
Does it
that
leave
we
in-
are trying to save.
Yeah, okay, so you're going to leave some of the existing
Yeah.
trees there. Okay. And one other thing, the access to the detention pond, was that grass pavers?
Yeah,
Okay, and that could also be a road to dump a heavy snowstorm into the detention, I imagine?
if need be, sure.
Yeah, and who's going to be responsible for snow removal?
It is a public road,
Okay,
so it would be up to the city. So the homeowners can, because it is a site condominium, can band together, and I know the priority of snow plowing is major roads first, school routes second, and then everything else. So if the homeowners want to band together and say if there's a large snowfall, we pay, over 4 inches, we'll pave the, we'll snow plow. That's up to the association.
very good, thanks.
Yes.
So, I know you have 4 different housing types. So I was just curious, is what you build there going to be totally driven by the market, or are you going to build a set number of specific?
It's totally driven by market
So it
conditions.
could be all one of those 4 housing types?
If I had 19 homeowners that wanted ranches, we would build 19 ranches, or 19 colonials, correct.
Got it, thank you. And then, what about the different facades?
So mandated by the building department that no facade is more or greater than 25% or vice versa between the house adjacent to it.
So there'll be variation?
So there'll be variations. And we like to do that too, to mix it up. We don't like the same color palette. We'll make sure bricks are different styles. We'll relocate homeowners to adjacent if that's mandatory that they had that.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add to that?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's more than, as Mr. Maniaci knows, it's more than just colors and brick patterns. It's actual architectural differences. So it's about 10 years ago, we had a requirement that we call it AB, so you really only had to have 2 different elevation types, but now we require at least 3. It's ABC, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Mr. Tagle?
I noticed on the west property line, Joe, that you are saving some existing trees, but you also have yard drains back there. Has PEA assured you that those trees are going to survive once they put the sewers in back there?
They have not, but these lots are, again, a standard subdivision, which we have deeper lots than we normally do. So that allowed us to keep the trees along the property line.
So they
So we're
might have to
pulling
move
the
the sewer
storm-
line
yeah, it's-
further towards
it's-
the house?
It's moved closer in.
Okay.
Here. Oh, yeah.
Don't get nervous, Joe, when the attorney asks a question. I had a question, and if you don't want to answer this question on the record, that's fine, but is there a reason you didn't consider this as a cluster?
We did consider it. It was just we opted for this. There wasn't much of a gain.
And maybe not enough natural resources to preserve to meet the ordinance, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it would have been, we would have to save, it didn't work out math-wise.
Okay. Then I have another question, and I'm going to put on my empty nester cap here. And maybe, again, this isn't a question for this forum, but what does the city need to do from a development standpoint to make it so that you are building all ranch homes, like to build a ranch community? I mean, there's a demand for it, and I know you guys in the development community aren't seeing it. But again, putting on my empty nester hat, I mean, I'm going to, that's what I want, and I know that I have a lot of people my age.
Buy from us across the street on
Trust me,
Trail South. We have beautiful, geared specifically for that community. They're first floor masters. We do have the optional second floors. They're very today styles. We did the modern farmhouse, and there's 14 of them waiting to be sold.
So that's sort of a model, right?
Yes.
And
If
so
that-
are you kind of waiting to see how that takes off, and then
more
maybe doing
demand will
more?
drive more of the same type.
Thank you.
Those were good questions. I mean, I didn't think to say the cluster, but it's funny that you brought that up because I remember we had a development that reminded me of this because you did leave a sort of, I don't know if the word is a belt, but going around the perimeter, you left the trees natural, and that's nice. I remember that specific one because it was a cluster, and I didn't personally feel like it qualified because they just basically put everything tight together and left a belt around. So I actually like that you did the belt and you didn't try to cram more more lots in. I did feel though that the south side was sort of lacking on the landscaping. I love how the trees separate you from the business, the commercial, the node. It's the west, which is like on the bottom, right? The west has a nice belt, but then there on the south, especially where that cul-de-sac is, it would be nice if there could be like a row of arborvitae.
We have 4 of them on the plan. We could add a couple more to make it a little bit wider. Our biggest problem is that we have to connect to the storm sewer and the sanitary sewer. The sanitary sewer is 18 feet deep, and it's right at the edge of the Edenberry on one side, and the water main is on the other side. It's not as deep, but it's there, and we have to remove trees that have grown over the utilities or where they end up in order to extend the utilities. Now, this site is unusual because the water department, or the engineering department is asking us to make 3 water connections, one on Edenberry, one on the other dead-end street, and one off of Waddles Road. But that's the standard policy in Troy to extend all the water lines and do as much interconnectivity as possible.
Okay.
So, hence
Okay.
the reason why we have to remove the trees.
Okay. The other question I had was in terms of connecting, I understand that some residents, we brought up connecting the streets, but when I drove over there to the street on the west side, I saw an actual walking path. I mean, it looked like people had been walking. Is there any way, and I don't know what the neighbors would think, but it seems to me it would be an advantage to connect the neighborhoods at least through walking paths, so there would be some connectivity. The neighbors are shaking their heads no. Okay. That was my
told you we had that
thought. I thought it would be
conversation.
nice because, we're all talking about making Troy walkable with bike paths, and it seems to me that it would be nice for people to be able to walk from one neighborhood through the other. If you're going for a walk, instead of having to go out onto Waddles, you can enter another subdivision and walk around. So I would be in favor of doing that. And then there was one other thing. I don't know. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah, Mr. Fox.
Well, yeah, on the topic of the interconnectivity, I was debating saving it for after the applicant had stepped away, which is why I've been unusually quiet. But so I understand that there was a previous conversation about connecting the roads and people came out in favor or opposed to the idea of connecting the roads. What is the actual, like, my understanding is that there is a benefit to interconnectivity. So I guess I'm just curious if Mr. Savanon, if you could comment on the types of benefits that interconnectivity creates. Like, I understand that the neighbors came out with an opinion on the interconnectivity, but it still might be a good idea to have internet connectivity. So I guess I was hoping we could have that conversation as opposed to just keeping everything sliced out and separate.
Well, we review the application that's presented to us, and this is
Okay.
what was presented to us.
Sure.
But in terms of what's preferred from an efficiency and a traffic movement standpoint, interconnectivity. Grid cities that are 100% interconnected, it's easier to move around than in suburban cities with little connectivity. We have a land use pattern in Troy with a lot of streets that look like this. That's how we developed over time, and that's the way it is. Again, this is what was proposed, and this is what we processed.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much for being here. Okay, so this isn't a public hearing, but it looks like there might be some people who want to come up and speak, so I'll go ahead and open it up for comment, if anyone would like to comment on this application before we turn it back to the commission. Yeah, go ahead, come on up, just sign in, sign your name and address, and we'll give.
It's done, and I, if you're going to do the 3-minute rule, my wife is here, and she will yield her minutes to me if that's helpful.
I forget what we said.
Did
about
we
that.
allow that in the bylaws? Were you right?
I feel like we addressed it and I forget now.
If you, I can make, also I can make it easier is if you've read my comments, I will not read them in there. I will address the issues that.
Yes, why don't
outside
you
of
just
that.
address those issues? We did receive it, and I'm hoping that everyone's had a chance to read it.
Okay. I've read the reply provided by the applicant. The two examples he gave, one of them is not to a side yard, and the other one is far offset from the side of the house. So what we're talking about is because of cost of sewer lines and fire safety requirements for increasing the size of the cul-de-sac, which are not yet implemented, they're the future rules from what I understand, this ballooned into a clear cut directly to the side of my house, where I'm gonna have road, sidewalk, grass, my only 2 windows out of the side of my house, on my side, where, believe me, people may come down, they'll hit an ice patch, they'll hit that, they'll fly right through my side of my house. If you've ever seen where Greenfield and 14 hit that house gets nailed all the time, where people slide right through it and go onto it. The conductivity issue, to me, is one where you brought up, and I'd like to talk about for a brief second, is if what you're gonna do is put a path, you're gonna put them walking across my side yard. From their street, they're gonna wave at my window as they connect and walk by. I don't think that's, again, safe or desirable. I think you're creating a nuisance from day one. I am the only neighbor, as you pointed out, that is not getting a natural buffer. I'm getting clear cut. I showed you a picture of a tree that is less than 3 feet from my property line that is in beautiful condition. That's coming down because of dollars, because of the cost to re-engineer a sewer, to move it to save a buffer for my house. It's coming down. And so I think my safety, my freedom from nuisance, I deserve a natural buffer like everybody else is getting. And I deserve the 6 to 8 foot fence along with it, so that, and I need it now, I would like it at the beginning of the project, not at the end, because if you plant a tree, it's not going to get planted until the process is all done. There's going to be people living in the subdivision well before he finishes off and puts the trees in the final grade on and the top coats. So I'm going to be living with the cars coming in and the traffic coming in during construction. So I would ask that that protective fence be 6 to 8 foot, maybe 8 foot, and put in as soon as final grade. I'm not asking for the entire property line. The width of the cul-de-sac to protect my home, from an absolute nuisance and a potential danger. And I'd like to talk about the connectivity of the roads if you want, because that issue did come up before. The issue, the prior project that he was going to do was going to be a wraparound residential around, that would be homes from Deerfield coming around to the side of Edenderry. And then behind it, it was going to be a 3-story condominium complex. And so those streets were going to come through and match. I wasn't opposed to that. I was getting an 80-foot side buffer. And so, because it wouldn't be a buildable lot next if you put those 2 streets through. So if you want to put 2 streets through, we'll have somebody who will argue against it right now behind me. But if you're going to put a street through, put both of them through. Put Deerfield through, put Edenderry through. That'll leave, because of the angles of the 2 streets, I'll get a natural buffer. I don't want it because what right now people understand is there is a large traffic lineup at Waddles and Rochester Road, and people have discovered that you can make a right on Gatwick, cut through, and come out on Troywood. And so, so what you're doing is creating more avenues for saying, God, I'm waiting by the light a little bit longer, so I'm going to cut through this one now and do it. But if it gets me a natural buffer, saves that cherry tree that's 3 feet from my property line, gets me, I'm for it. Thank you. If you have any questions of me, I don't know, as you see, I'm a lawyer. I've been doing real estate plan and representing developers for 40 years. I get it,
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak?
My name is John Stancroft.
Could you sign in before I?
I've already signed in.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
We live behind the Sovers, immediately adjacent to this property. And our concern, more than anything, is noticing that the builder has proposed to leave a number of trees along the property line between the 2 communities. And I think, generally speaking, the homeowners are very happy about that. We'd like to see some natural buffer. But we've also noticed that some of those trees that are proposed to be left are diseased and potentially at risk. So our request is that the homeowners who are interested have some kind of a vehicle to address those trees that we believe are at risk and should be taken down and weren't originally planned to be taken down. So that is our concern, is that there's some vehicle for us, either through the builder or however that gets done, to address the individual trees that are proposed to be left between the 2 properties. I'm not here to argue about the through streets because we've been through that before, and frankly, Mr. Silver is correct. We would also benefit from that as well because we would have a 60-foot buffer next to our property as well. But be that as it may, that's the concern of some of the other homeowners in the neighborhood is that some of these trees actually need to be brought down, and we'd like to have some input as to which of those trees could be removed. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I can let Mr. Savedant address that if you want. I mean, I feel like when we get this packet, it's pretty detailed about exactly which trees are being removed and which aren't, and I think there's an analysis done on the trees indicating which ones are landmark, which ones are woodland, which ones are, I don't know what word we use, junk trees or not nice trees.
There's a list that
What are they called?
shows location,
Yeah.
species, diameter at breast height, and quality. And there's a table on here that shows all that.
So, and I believe that when they fill that out, then they have to stick to it. If they indicate that they're saving a tree, that they really have to save that tree, and vice versa, so, and somebody.
Within reason, and as I understand the gentleman, so we've got a developer who's trying to pay attention to the neighbors who want to preserve as many trees as possible, and he wants to do as little as disruption as possible because A, it annoys the neighbors, and B, it costs money to take trees down and to move dirt and things like that. So you can see on this drawing here, they show an area in the corner here, and I get all turned around when it's twisted, in the southeast corner where there's a lot of trees. And I'm assuming the gentleman is referring, for example, here where where monitoring is going to just say, well, I'm going to leave those trees alone because I don't want to disrupt it. I want to make everyone happy. And it sounds like this gentleman is concerned with the potential for one of those trees falling down. No. I'm down here.
Yeah, there.
Well, could you come? I'm not the chair. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go, if you, yes, please, come up and.
What he's concerned is, yeah, he's pointing over there, it's the north, south.
It turns you around, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's north.
Southwest?
It's along the neighborhood. Those trees. And
Okay.
then along to John's house, the corner one, which would be next to mine, right about there. And so what he's saying is some of those trees are decayed, dying, and many have fallen.
Okay.
And those are the trees he's actually referring to.
Thank you. So there's a standard in the zoning ordinance when trees come to be, everything has a life expectancy, including landscaping. So when trees become dying or diseased, then they look like they could potentially fall and hurt an individual or fall on some property that they can come down. I'm hearing from at least 2 residents that they're concerned that some of the trees that are proposed to remain maybe in that state already, and we can certainly make that a condition that dead and dying trees as identified in the survey be removed as a condition of final approval.
Yep, that sounds about right. I'm just curious whether that cherry tree that the resident was talking about in his yard, if that's considered a landmark tree. Because if it is, the zoning ordinance is clear that landmark trees should not be removed for development.
Well, may I?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so when there were some planning commission members who were on the planning commission when we developed the tree protection language that we have today, I believe. Mr. Cran, I think you were on the planning commission at the time, Mr. Tagle. Okay. We had to decide what kind of approach, it's been a while, what kind of approach to take for tree protection, and what we came up with was we didn't want to be too heavy-handed and completely eliminate the potential to develop property if you weren't allowed to cut a tree down, for example. And what we did is came up with an ordinance that encouraged but not required tree protection. So it's encouraged to protect and save trees, but not required. The penalties for taking down a landmark tree are that you've got to replace more inches than if you, and you're incentivized to keep it. So you get a bonus for preserving it. So I just want to say, like, it's intended to preserve great trees, but not required.
Okay, and then another question I had is, maybe I'm not quite understanding the proximity of this neighbor's house to this development, but is there a concern that a car could fly into his house? Like, can you point out where the house is?
So here's the cul-de-sac, and the house is right here. So you see the Eden Dairy Street, and this house is right here.
But I imagine there's a setback from his house, and the setbacks are being met?
So the back of curb, the back of curb, this distance from here to the property line is a little over 24 feet. And then there's another, I believe, 12 feet to the property, so it's about 36 feet.
Okay, and it's the side of his house?
Yes.
Right, okay. I see. All right, thank you. One question I had too was, and I don't know who the question is for, if it's for the applicant or not, but the thought of doing a T instead of a cul-de-sac, it would permit vehicles to turn around, but I don't know if it would help matters at all. I don't know.
I don't know if they've laid this out with a T to see how it would look. I can't answer that.
Okay. Mr. Fox?
So are we on to planning commission comment? Are we?
Yes,
Okay,
I mean, we're discussing it now.
No, cool, I just wanted to make sure. Well, I mean, you referenced potentially working into a T. I mean, I understand that in the past, I definitely believe that there were residents who came in and expressed issues with the connectivity. But based on the residents that we've had come today, it seems like the internet connectivity isn't necessarily an issue, and in fact, it would alleviate some of the concerns of residents who have come in to comment on this. So, you know, as much as I think this is a really solid development, I mean, we're laying out how this is gonna look hypothetically for 60, 70 years. And I think if we got a chance to connect the roads, we should do it now. Because otherwise, you're just gonna have Deerfield, which is so small, it has no houses abutting it. That's just gonna go off into woods forever. And then, you know, Edenberry is gonna be the way that it is. I mean, I think now's the time to do it, I guess, with the connectivity.
Yep, Mr. Biekner.
Interconnectivity, again, I think where this is going is it's not gonna interconnect, which I think is best for everybody. I lived really close to 14 in Greenfield. I'm very familiar with that. I know exactly what you're talking about. Greenfield's a lot bigger than this cul-de-sac, but I know that very well. I also live on a dead end in Troy and have 28 years, so I get it. I've had one instance in 28 years where a drunk driver went too far. So I get it, but again, that street's a little busier than this. We're hearing you. I think the applicant has said that they would put, whether it's fencing and/or arborvitae's, I would recommend both, because fences stay good for a while. I see him nodding in the back, and arborvitae's take time to grow. So I'd like to see a combination of both to try to alleviate your issues, because nobody wants lights going in their home. I like the plan, I like the design. Mr. Tagle and Mr. Krent know it as well as anybody up here, and you got their kudos, and that's a good thing. I like where this is going, and I think there's some good details that we can make it a little better.
Thank you. Yep, Mr. Lambert.
Can I ask Mr. Maniaci to come back to answer a couple of questions about the fencing and, you know, Mr. Silver had requested that the fence be the width of the cul-de-sac. You don't have a problem with that?
I do not.
And he said, and excuse me for my ignorance, but he suggested that the fence be put in before the development is finished, I guess during the grading of the,
After we remove the trees, we can do it.
that
We
works
can-
for you too?
Yes, that's not a problem.
Okay, and then Ms. Cott mentioned something, maybe from a safety point of view, I don't know if it's feasible or not, but she mentioned the bollards as being something to help establish a little bit more safety there. Is that something you could do, or is that not feasible for this?
Normally, you see them at the end of a dead-end street, so I don't know how attractive it's going to be in a cul-de-sac.
Okay.
I did want to correct Brent on one issue. The 24 feet is to the back of the sidewalk. There's another 5-foot sidewalk and 10-foot off of the street pavement. So there's another 15 feet onto that dimension, but the easement starts at the back of the sidewalk. That's where the dimension of the 24 feet. So there's another 15 feet to the actual pavement of the property. So I don't have a problem with the combination of the arborvitae's and the fence. The bollards, I'm not a big fan of it. I don't know if it'd be that attractive in a subdivision at the end of a cul-de-sac.
How about boulders?
Boulders, I don't have a problem with landscape boulders.
Big boulder or two?
They're going to be on top
positioned well?
of the storm easement, or storm easement, but that's not a problem. I don't think there's a problem with the city,
Good idea.
so.
I know you're not supposed to say anything. I guess you could nod your head if you want to. You're not supposed to say anything. Yep.
Getting really into the weeds, I think as long as there are landscape boulders in a landscape bed and not on the right-of-way,
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
because we have a problem with boulders that are in the right-of-way, in the city right-of-way.
Makes sense.
And there was Mr. Silver, we've spoken on the phone a bunch. It's nice meeting you face-to-face finally. Mr. Silver suggested an 8-foot fence. The limitation of a fence in the residential is 6 feet.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I don't have a
We
problem
had
with
questions about the trees. So can you comment about the trees that were potentially not doing very well? I'd
I
love
think they're
your
marked,
say of.
I believe they're marked on the site plan that if they're in poor condition, they are marked to be removed.
Okay.
The ones that we're trying to save are the ones that are the healthy trees.
And the one tree that's 3 feet away from the property line, is that a landmark tree?
Which one?
The cherry tree
Cherry tree?
in Mr. Silver's yard.
Did he see that?
Is that number, there's 2 trees right there adjacent to the property that we're saving. Which one is that? 1342, 1642. Is that one being saved? Oh, so no. I'm going to try my best. I did tell them that. I did, I had met with the Silvers on their on the property and pointed out exactly which trees were coming out. And then we had to revise the plan because we used the old standards for the fire department. And when we revised it, a few more trees were coming out, and that cherry tree is one of them. But we will see what we can do. If I can convince the engineering department not to have to put the water line there, then we can definitely save the tree. There will already be 2 points of connection, so Antonia was versed to the conversation, so we'll see what happens.
Okay. So you're saying if he doesn't require the third
Yeah, if we
water
can make a
line.
strong enough argument that we don't have 3 points of connection, then we'll, and they listen, we'll be fine.
Okay,
Be able to save the tree.
okay, thank you. Oh, Mr. Tagle,
Yes.
What material would you propose the fence be made out of?
Right now, we've been using the plastic ones that look like wood so that they don't rot. I can always put in a cedar fence, but I mean, over time, those things decay. So we've been putting the ones, if you've seen some of our other developments that where we put fences in, it's the plastic ones. I hate the word plastic, but it's the resin is the new term.
Would you be willing to talk to the neighbors and say, you know, are you guys, I mean, show them samples of what the
Yeah, we can choose colors.
natural,
And
the
types.
plastic fence looks like?
Yeah. Won't be the white one, but yeah. I can give options. I have a direct communication with the Silvers, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
anything else for the applicant before he sits down? Okay, thank you. Yep, Mr. Fox.
Well, and I want to preface this comment by saying that, you know, it feels really weird that I'm personally leaning no on this, because here's the thing, it's a good applicant, very amenable, very willing to work with neighbors, very good design, the variance is all good. To me, it just seems silly to not connect the roads. Like, this is how it's gonna sit for 60 years, and to me, this is the time to connect it. And it sounds like it alleviates some of the concerns that residents have. So that's where I'm at with this personally. Again, I'm just one of 8 of y'all who are up here, but for me, connecting the roads is the direction that this should move.
I mean, I'll comment on that. I tend to agree with you because when you drive around Troy and you see a bunch of stub streets with no outlet off of main roads, it does seem like everyone just wants to be isolated. Having said that, I'm trying to put my shoes in the neighbors, and I think about things like when you're used to living on a dead end, there's advantages to that. There's not people cutting through. Cut through, I think, is a real fear at this location because of its proximity to Rochester Road and Waddles and the traffic that builds up there. So I think that if the applicant had come and it was already, and he was asking for it to be connected, or, I mean, I don't know that he has to ask. If he was presenting it to be connected, I would have been fine with it. But given that he's been to the neighbors, even if it was years ago, and came back and said, I'm not gonna do it because I think it's better this way, and I don't know that I'm gonna deny it for that reason. But that's just where I'm sitting, I think, right now. Anyone else? Yep, Mr. Sabina.
So, and Julie, feel free to chime in. So this is the application that's presented. It does not have connectivity. So in my opinion, if the majority of the Plan Commission feels strongly that there should be vehicular interconnectivity, the move would be to deny this and not approve this subject to connectivity, because I think it's fair. We put this on the portal. We have people that call us and ask us about these developments, and they say, is it connected? We say, no. Well, I don't have a problem with it then, and they hang up. I don't want to give the impression to anybody who decided not to come tonight because it wasn't interconnected, and then we do a bait and switch. I don't think that's fair. So if a majority feels that that's the direction they want to go in, then denial of this and giving the applicant an opportunity to come back with a connected development is I think, the fair thing to do.
Absolutely, I would agree with that for sure.
I would, and again, I'm not debating the merits of interconnectivity, but this complies with everything in the zoning ordinance, all standards.
Right, that's what I was gonna say. I prefer connectivity. I agree with Mr. Fox that having all of these substreets, when you live on a substreet, you know that eventually that was supposed to be connected at some point. But in terms of meeting this project that we are reviewing it's a by right project, it meets the ordinance standards, so I'd be worried about denying it solely on the connectivity issue.
Yes, Mr. Biekner.
Since we're missing 2 commissioners, do we need 5 votes or do we need?
Missing one.
We're just missing Ms. Malala
It
Howard.
is just one. I'm sorry, David got here. My apologies.
Yep.
Yeah. So we need 5 votes?
Yes.
To pass it, or to deny, whatever, no, there's no
Not a resolution.
resolution out there yet. Does someone want to propose a resolution? Mr. Lambert?
Oh, I'm sorry, before, can we clarify, the fence? Mr. Silverherd asked for it to be the width or length, I don't know what, of the cul-de-sac, is that what we're?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, whoever's going to do a resolution. Yep, it sounds like Mr. Lambert's got it.
Well, based upon the information we've been presented and based upon our questions, I believe the site plan standards have been met. So I'm going to move that preliminary site condominium approval pursuant to Article 8 and Section 10.02 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Town Haven site condominium, 19 units / lots, south of Wiles, west of Rochester, being parcels 88-20-22-226-023 and 88-20-22-226-024, Section 22, approximately 8 acres in size, currently zoned R1C, one-family residential. District be granted subject to the following conditions. Number 1, that a fence be installed at the end of the cul-de-sac, being the width, extending the entire width of the cul-de-sac, a 6-foot plastic or resin fence be installed during final grading, and the color be determined in consultation with the adjacent neighbors. Secondly, that dead and dying trees be removed from the site.
I'll second that. Wait, did we want to include some
Oh, I'm sorry.
arborvitae in
Yes,
front?
additional 3 arborvitae and possible landscape boulders if they fit in the site.
Okay, do we have a second? Mr. Hudson? Discussion? All right, I think we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Hudson?
I've seen a lot of Mr. Miniachi's projects in Troy. This is one of his better ones. I'm voting for it.
That's a yes, Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Biekner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
No.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we're moving on to public comment for items that are on the agenda. I know it sounds weird, but that's how it's done. So if anyone else has anything to say about what was... Yeah, you can.
I appreciate the commission's thought for me, thought for the safety of my home. I just questioned whether the future fire safety standards, not the currently enacted fire standards for the width and length of the dead end, have to be followed when it's not yet formally adopted. That would allow him to have actually pushed the cul-de-sac further back than it is now, which is the original plan when we came out and met that he presented to me, that left a lot more trees in the natural buffer than it does now. And that it is not currently enacted. It's a future ordinance that may be enacted or fire requirement. And we're going now, today, not in the future. My second one is I thought that there was also the ask and I would have liked it to have been in the motion, that there was an actual, on the record, an attempt to save 1642 rather than to rely on its good graces. I know him to be an honorable man, but I represent developers all the time, and it comes down to dollars and cents. If it makes no sense, then the dollars don't happen. So,
Thank you. Can we ask Ms. Dufresne about the issue where are we not using the right, we're not using a,
Well, all I can say to that is that the application was reviewed by the fire department who supported it. So I haven't done a deep dive on the point that Mr. Silver just made, but this was reviewed and supported by the fire department.
I don't know that legal has reviewed the ordinance revisions. Perhaps Ms. Bloom has. I know that I haven't. So until I read in the packet today, I was not aware of the issue, so.
right, the issue being
No,
raised, from what I understand, is that we're applying
Right, we're
something
applying
that.
standards that don't actually apply.
So, okay, and then, and then there was that issue that we didn't ask them we didn't include in the resolution about he was gonna work with the engineering department about the water. I don't know if it was a water main, but if he didn't have to have that third one, then he would be able to save the tree. So,
Madam Chair,
yes.
I was going to mention that I think Mr. Maniaci would prefer to save that tree if the city doesn't require that third water inlet. So hopefully, maybe Mr. Silver, I don't want to speak because Mr. Maniaci has left, but Mr. Silver works with Mr. Maniaci. I'm sure they would both prefer to save that tree to avoid the cost of putting that third water connection in there, so.
That is a good point. He's motivated to save your tree for his own reasons, so, hopefully that happens. All right. Does anyone else have anything to say, or I'm going to move on to Planning Commission comment? We're good? All right. Ms. Zarnicki?
I have none, thank you, Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Fox?
Good.
Mr. Biekner? Mr. Hudson?
Nothing.
Mr. Faison?
Nothing from me.
Mr. Lambert?
It was just a public promotion for Mr. Savin is going to be speaking at tomorrow's Troy Rotary meeting on office conversions into home or into apartment units. So if anybody wants to hear him speak on that, it's 12 noon at the former Bank of America building Wednesday. So come and see him speak.
We didn't negotiate fees.
Well,
I guess I'm doing this for free?
that's
Okay.
as a tax benefit.
Just this once.
Yes.
The Gene M. Stein Pavilion ribbon cutting is Thursday. So if you want to attend that, I believe it's at 6 PM.
Yep.
So if you want to attend, and, it's another ribbon cutting that's very noteworthy.
I just drove by it, and I couldn't believe it. I didn't, it came up overnight, I feel like. It all came together.
Yeah.
Exciting. Okay. Mr. Tagle, you're good? Ms. Dufresne?
So I have a question for Mr. Savanett. We have friends in town, and they used to live here, but now they live in Atlanta. And they wanted to know, what is going on with that hotel that's being built on Rochester Road and I-75 with the stairwell? I didn't have an answer, so I'm asking you.
Stairwells and elevator shafts are looking good. Yeah. I think they're showcasing them to the public for a while. I don't know there's nothing that I'm aware of that stalled the process. I don't know. You're not the first one to ask. They're not in violation of anything because,
Last meeting, didn't it?
they are moving, but
But are they?
they're,
Which is it?
I'm not aware of any issues.
All right. Okay, thank you.
We actually asked that question, I think, 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
No, so it's kind of funny that you came in and asked the same thing.
Yep.
Good thing to ask. Good question.
Ms. Scott, anything?
Thanks again for having me.
Nice job.
Yeah.
For coming.
Nice job, Ms. Scott. Well, it was nice to have you, and nothing from me, so we're adjourned.